Quite an array of other British products. Let's take a look at the delivery yesterday.
PG tips from Manchester, obviously. You can't ignore that.
We've got some gin from Scotland, but by the way, that could, of course, be Scotch whisky in terms of how much of British it is. We've got some wine from England. Well, we've got some Marmite, which I'm a huge Marmite fan, so that's Burton-on-Trent's best.
Fantastic English cheeses there, which I'm sure you'll appreciate because we've got a huge market in cheese. And what we're trying to do here is show that once we leave the European Union, you'll have some great products that will be able to be sold still in Europe, but we're going to expand.
Well, lucky old Michel Barnier. Let's see how long it takes him to get through that lot. Stephen Woolfe joins us now from Brussels, and here in the studio, along with our very own handmade hamper of goods, is the commentator Yasmin Alibhai-Brown. Welcome to you, Yasmin, and to you, Stephen. What made you choose those particular products, many of which we have in our hamper here? Stephen, that's to you.
Yes, I mean, what we'd known from Michel Barnier, he was a huge fan of Shakespeare and uses quotes from Winston Churchill, so that was fairly easy. From my perspective as a Mancunian, I grew up with PG tips from my grandmother. It was a good product, and also because it's Unilever, it shows a positive way that we can trade with a Anglo-European business to show that we would be friendly and working with them in the future. And the whole idea of having some of the modern products like the gin is to show the expansion of our ideas in new areas. And you know what? Michel Barnier really loved them. We talked about them, he enjoyed them. And I think him and his team are going to enjoy it over the next few weeks.
Right, Yasmin Alibhai-Brown, what's your problem with some of the gifts that were included in the hamper as representing British values and products?
Well, British values, let's start with Shakespeare. Shakespeare was absolutely European. There would be no Shakespeare. Verona, Padua, Rome, Greek stories, A. B, let's talk about Eccles cakes. Sultanas imported from somewhere. The great thing about Britain is it's always been open, receptive, curious nation. That's the great strength of this country. And I fear at the moment that we're retreating into a greyness, which isn't British at all.
Stephen Woolfe, what do you say to that? That actually this was really also something of a cheap stunt to try and win over Michel Barnier, which it probably won't do, however generous you were with your gifts.
No, of course it wasn't a cheap stunt, and Mr. Barnier and his team didn't accept it as that. What they did accept very clearly, that this was an offer of friendship to open up a negotiation and discussion with him in an open way and a friendly way, and that's exactly what he accepted, and that's exactly how our meeting went ahead. And anyone who understands European politics and how you talk to politicians out here understand you've got to give them that level of respect, and in order to be able to have proper discussions. And we did discuss what would happen in the negotiations. We talked about the way that we wanted to seek a positive free trade arrangement, but of course to remember that you've got to comply with the will of those who voted in the referendum to leave, and he accepted that too. He accepted very clearly that there will be Brexit in March 2019, and he is working towards that.
Right. I mean, isn't that the case that even the EU negotiating team are working in some part towards the possibility of a no deal?
Absolutely, but they are very civilised people. And I think this is a bit embarrassing, actually, to turn up with... There are messages here.
Why is it embarrassing?
It's embarrassing. I mean, how would we feel if they turned up here with a box full of pasta and pesto for us because they want us to talk to them nicely? Come on.
But Jeremy Corbyn turned up with an Arsenal shirt. David Davis
doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it right. It makes it just as foolish. I'm sorry. You know, show some respect, actually. There is a very, and I do agree with Mr. Woolfe that the negotiations need to be civilised and respectful. This was a stunt, and it was making something of Britain which Britain isn't. So I'm actually quite embarrassed that you did this.
Right, but do you think it will help in terms of oiling the negotiations?
No. I think what will oil the negotiations, and I hope it happens, is when both sides are civilised and realise that
this is civilised, isn't it, to have an exchange of...
Listen, for centuries, blood has flown between us and them, and we are actually much more united than we seem to be thinking at the moment, and that'll help.
Right. Stephen Woolfe, I mean, one of the things that was pointed out is that some of the products you included are actually made by firms who are worried they're going to be hit hard by EU withdrawal. Marmite and PG Tips, for example, made by Unilever, the giant Anglo-Dutch company, and they were warning they would have to sort of consolidate their headquarters away from here after Brexit. Was that a gaffe?
Of course not. And again, what we've had is, if you see in many, many international meetings, whether it's those from heads of states to even the Queen, you see gifts being handed over from country to country. And that's how we approach this today, not to have a stunt, but again, to open a hand of friendship to Mr. Barnier in our negotiations, where he was meeting for the first time a group of important and well-spoken leavers to express a view across the spectrum, both from the Labour Party to the Conservatives and those in the centre with Lord Digby-Jones, that we have very strong support to continue Brexit, and that despite those who've already turned up and seen him, like Mr Clegg and Adonis et al., that there will be no turning back on Brexit, that this must happen. And do you know what? He was very clear about that. He accepted that.
Oh. We seem to have lost Stephen Woolfe in his flow there. Let's go to you, Graham Brady. Just very briefly, Philip Hammond is to tell German business leaders in Berlin today that the EU needs to clarify the kind of post-Brexit relations it wants, that it takes two to tango. Do you think the UK has actually moved further than the EU over this?
I don't know. I thought before Christmas, when we got the agreement on phase one of the negotiations, I thought it marked a real sea change. There seemed to be a much more constructive environment, a much more constructive response from the EU 27. I think a recognition that this is something that's happening. It's in the interest of both sides to get it right.
But do you think the UK's moved too far?
No, I think we're making good progress, and I hope to see that constructive engagement from the EU side continuing and developing.
All right, we'll split all these goods afterwards.
And
Yasmin, after
Marmite
the
will do it. Marmite will do it.
Stephen Woolfe, thank you very much for joining us from Brussels, and you here, Yasmin, in the studio.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.